Hello, everyone. This is Gloria, the host of the Love in the Work You Do podcast. And today you'll be joining me in a conversation that I had with Kim Korven. Kim Korven is the owner and creator of the Gentle Way divorce system. Let me tell you a little bit about Kim. Kim is an unlikely advocate of a peaceful divorce. She was very competitive in judo and for many years a practicing attorney. One would expect that she would enjoy conflict. Yet, when her marriage was not working, she was nearly overcome with anxiety and a desire to avoid conflict with her spouse altogether. Thus, she remained married when she knew in her heart that her marriage would be better off if they had separated. Traditional divorce terrified her, and she knew all too well what it looked like through an attorney's eye. So she set out to change the traditional narrative of dramatic, painful divorce and did so peacefully, discovering that divorce can be transformative and restorative for all involved. She learned to start with how you raise divorce with your spouse. Kim is no longer a practicing attorney, though, and she dedicates herself to working with families as a mediator or consultant to help them achieve similar results. So, on today's episode, I'll be asking Kim a whole lot of questions. Um, Questions like, what is the gentle way divorce system? Um, if she, sharing about how to know when it's time to consider a divorce, if she's worked with anyone who had considered divorce and then ended up staying married because of her work with them. We also dug into a couple other things. We talked about family peace specialist, how you can transform an already messy situation, what's the traditional way of divorce. We also spoke about how to, connect with ourselves at a young age so that we can always tell what we're feeling. You know, um, in Christianity, it's called, letting like partnering with the Holy Spirit in such a way that you can always tell when you're making a wrong or a bad decision. And then I know, like most people always, they talk about that little voice in the back of your head or that little voice that you hear that tells you that the decision you're making is right or wrong. So, like, how can we hone that as a young child? So we talked about that too. I also asked Kim how she went from becoming a lawyer to then becoming a mediator. And if someone else wanted to do the same thing, how would they retrace, the steps that she took? In general, if you're thinking about ending your marriage, but you don't know how to tell your spouse, you have a choice. It's either pain or peace. And it begins with how you tell your spouse you want a divorce. If you say, I can't stand your guts, expect a very expensive war that lasts for years. That's what Kim says. But if you move out and then refuse to talk except through lawyers, you'll end up overspending and conflict will be through the roof before you're done. And that's why Kim created a divorce questionnaire and script based on her personal experience so that you can tell your husband or spouse that your marriage is over and keep things peaceful. So if everything I've talked about sounds like something that you're interested in, how about you come on in, pull up a chair, and let's learn together. Hello, everyone. This is Gloria, the host of the Love and the Work You Do podcast. And today I have with me Kim Korven, all the way from Canada. Whoop, whoop. And we will be talking everything divorce, the gentle way of divorcing. Kim is the Chief Peace Officer. She is the owner and creator of the Gentle Way Divorce. And um, I just feel like what we are going to talk about today will be beneficial to everyone that is either considering a divorce, or are you currently separated or looking towards separation. There's so many information here that I, as a divorced mom, feel like would have been so beneficial to me, when I was going through my divorce. So I hope this sounds like something that you would love to listen to. And if it does, come on in, pull up a chair, and let's learn together. And hey, Kim, thanks for being here today.
Gloria, thank you so much for inviting me. It really, like, spreading the message of peace and is really important to me. So I was thrilled to be here, and I'm 2 hours behind you time wise, and we're recording early. That
Yes,
tells
this
you
is
I
super
am,
early.
I'm excited. So thank you.
Thank you so much for honoring me, for honoring, other women also who this will go out to. So just off the top of my head, normally, again, we've talked about this. I do like a brief intro to the podcast, but then I always love for people that I do bring on to share a little bit about themselves. So if you can share a little bit about you, and to the guest, I would, or to the listeners, I would love to hear what you have to say.
All right. Well, I was single through my 20s. And when I was about 30 or 31, I started dating this fellow. And the biological clock, I guess, was ticking. And we made a decision to get married. I was 33. I was convinced I was marrying for life. I was making the right choice to the right man who was a good man, good provider, checking off all those boxes that we're taught
Mm,
that are important. And even what I learned through that experience was being married to a man who's really good at cleaning the bathroom is less important than being able to marrying someone who you can talk to.
oh
Because
my
we never
gosh.
really talked.
Oh wow. Sounds, oh my
And
gosh.
there I was, professional lawyer, and marriage wasn't what I expected it to be.
Mm,
And I know as soon as I was pregnant with our first child, it was like my husband, all his issues started bubbling up. And I was
mm,
dealing with issues at work. And it was a really, really horrible time. And our son's born and we love him and we carry on. And 4 years later, I got pregnant again. And I remember having a conversation with my husband that, you know, and his issues never went away.
mm,
And I remember having a conversation with him saying, I don't think our marriage is going to last once we
mm,
have two kids. I don't think I'm going to be able to cope with two kids and you um, if you don't seek some help.
mm,
And I had that conversation and he sought help for a while and then, things were going well. So everything shifted again. But I stayed in that limbo state of knowing in my heart that I don't think this is going to work for 3 years
mm.
before I did anything about it.
Oh,
And the irony, of course, was that I practiced family law. I'd gone to court for women.
mhm,
And there I was going, I don't want to do it this way. I don't want my kids to have to deal with this. Believing that divorce would harm my children
yeah.
more than, and thinking that staying together was for the best. and in that really horrible, horrible, horrible space. And it ended up, I did end up realizing, oh, this marriage is harming our kids. And I mean, I was a judo coach like as a kid, and then came back to it when my son was 6. And so I'd been back at it for over a year by then. And it was just like, okay, how do we do this? And I knew, and I figured out how to do it peacefully. And I thought, and my husband, he's Ukrainian Catholic. He does not believe in divorce.
Oh,
And
wow.
people who knew us thought, how do you do it, Kim? And I'm like, oh, anybody can do it. And then I had a few years later, a second cousin was in a really ugly divorce battle, and he ended up killing himself, committed suicide. And that is when I started to realize I have to figure out what I did. And so that has morphed to what I do now, and why I walked away, part of why I walked away from being a lawyer. But there you go.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know in that we've wrapped the personal into the to the business side of you. Kind of like your origin story in a way, actually. So love that. So if so the title of the podcast is Loving the Work You Do, right? And so you have a unique story in that you did start out as a lawyer, but you've morphed to become a mediator, a consultant, and that you're fully doing that work. I feel like it is your calling, it is your passion, it's your life's work. Do you so the question is different because you went from there to there, right? um were you, maybe when you were younger, that child that always solved the problem for people? Were you always like the reconciler? Like I'm trying to figure out, like, how did we go into law when, is there a degree you could have studied to be a mediator? you know what was your dream as a young child?
Now that's, you see, I'm laughing because it's quite the tale, and it's a tale that most people wouldn't expect. I started out actually as a political activist in the farm movement, was very involved, and I went on a youth exchange called Canada World Youth out of high school, and I spent 3 months in Indonesia. And it was about leadership and figuring out that all people are exactly the same. But I thought I was going to be a farmer.
Wow.
And before that exchange, I had actually been accepted to study agriculture. Okay. And
totally different.
well, I thought about being a lawyer when I was 16, and thought, who wants to be a lawyer? Like, and when you're raised to question authority, why would I want to be part of the establishment? That was not where I wanted to be. And when I was 20, I thought about law again and went, no, who wants to be a lawyer? But then I ended up going to Mexico on my own. And I should say I did a lot of traveling. I used to live my life before law school. When I had an opportunity to do something, I would always ask myself, if you had 6 months left to live, what regrets would you have?
That's the ticket question. Yep.
So I did a lot of stuff. And I ended up going to Mexico on my own, with the Lonely Planet guidebook. I found a really great, cheap hotel that was clean. And then I was asked to go to a timeshare presentation. And I had sat through timeshare presentations before, and I thought, no problem, I'll get to be at a nice resort with a private beach for a day. Well, I spent the entire day in a room, and they paired me with a young woman from Minnesota who knew about nasty prairie winters, and right. So there was this immediate rapport. Very, very shrewd. Long story short is I was unemployed and I booked a week at a timeshare, right? Planning on going back.
Wow.
I bought a week at a timeshare and I felt completely stupid and demoralized. I'd paid the down payment on my parents' affiliate credit card. Like I had enough money to pay it, but it was, I felt absolutely horrible. And when I came home, the friend who I stayed with, because I was from a small town, the friend who I stayed with introduced me to a friend of hers who had studied law. And I shared this, poured out my heart about this story. And she's like, what jurisdiction does it say on the contract, Kim? And I said, oh, California. And she said, don't worry about it. For the amount of money for them to collect from you is super, super difficult. Just walk away and cut your losses. Mm-hmm. So I did, but I thought, I never want to be taken like that again. So I went to law school. That was the tipping point, right? Like making a foolish decision.
But it helped.
Well, and I love the law. Like I loved law school. Mm-hmm. And I think it was because my first degree is sociology, where we examine social problems. And that was frustrating for me. And what I really liked about law was all of a sudden, there's a method to solve problems and to improve society.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I went to law school
and now you're a mediator.
Well, when I went to law, when I started law school, I think I drove all my friends and family crazy because they'd tell me about a problem and I would say, you need to go to court.
Yes.
Right? I saw that as the best problem-solving method ever. But by my third year, I was thinking, oh yeah, mediation. But at that time here, you had to be a practicing lawyer for 3 years before the Law Society would let you be a mediator.
Excuse me.
So I went into traditional practice. And I remember my first ever small claims trial. This fellow had, and I mean, I was way excited. I get to run a trial, right? Like I was so junior and it was so exciting. And it was all about a fence. Who would pay for the materials for this fence that my client built? The defendant owned the land. My client owned a trailer that was on the land. And they had struck a verbal arrangement that my client would build a fence. He would contribute his labor. The landlord would pay materials. Then the landlord refused to pay. So this is what we went to court for, the cost of a fence, the materials. Wow. And I remember the landlord brought a board from the fence and, there was a hole in it to show it was very bad quality lumber. And I'm thinking at the time, like the anxiety in me was like, how am I going to deal with this? And at the end of the day, we were successful, except the court didn't award my client deducted income sales tax off the award my client got. And I'm happy, right? We were successful. We won. And my client was angry. Oh, wow. And I'm like, what? But you got what you wanted. And he was mad and he was wanting to appeal. And I remember, and I had taken, I went to a weekend course and took reality therapy, which is a form of counseling.
Okay.
after we got this decision, and while he was mad, and it was still appeal period time. And I was walking one day and I thought, oh, I remembered our initial conversation. His daughter and her children lived in that trailer. So the next time I spoke to him and he was going off about how horrible, this decision was, I asked him, didn't you I said, didn't you build the fence to keep your grandchildren safe? And he just stopped, right? Like there was silence on the phone. And then he was, yes, I did. And when he got back to his interests in doing it, he was perfectly fine with the decision. And it brought home for me how the legal system doesn't address people's interests. And when a third party makes a decision about your life, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that really tweaked for me, oh, can we do this differently? And it wasn't until almost 10 years later, when I had my own firm, that I went and took mediation training in Boulder, so that I could add mediation to my skill set. So it started. And it was actually when I took the mediation training, was right around the time I had that conversation with my husband about, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. So
Wow. So you were the first person kind of used your own new skill on. That's good. So does that mean that everyone I see in the court system who's a mediator, like they actually don't need to be a lawyer first?
No, yeah, you do not need to be a lawyer first.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. So learned
No.
something new. So if there's anyone out there who maybe has gone to the court before or loves what mediators do, here's to you becoming one maybe after your first degree. Go ahead. You wanted to say something?
Well, and I'm not naturally good at dealing with conflict. In my family, nobody fought. It was just, silence.
Mm.
And, so I can still be pretty good at being passive aggressive. But that was my starting point. So I got to look at it. If I can do this, anybody can.
That's really good. I love that.
And it's really, in any kind of conflict, divorce, or there's a couple key elements. And one is taking responsibility, right? Instead of blaming the other person, it's like, no, thinking about, how am I responsible? So in my marriage, for example, when I was planning how I was going to tell him and how to end it, I wanted to blame him. I really, really wanted to blame him. But I remembered, oh yeah, when he proposed, my whole body was screaming, say no. But we were camping in a national park. And I thought, and actually, before I thought about the 8-hour drive home, my first thought was, he's going to cry if I say no. And I don't know how to deal with this. I can't cope with it if he cries. Like, there's no way. And then it was, oh, that drive home is going to be really awkward. So then I thought, well, how bad could it be?
Yeah. Yeah.
And once I remembered that, it was, I can't blame him. That shifted everything. And then I learned in a child protection file once from a social worker that children love their parents no matter what the parent does. So my goal, in my North Star in the whole divorce, was I wanted my children to have the best relationship possible with their father. And everything I did was done with that in mind.
Gotcha.
So there was no going to court. It was, when I was talking to him, like I told him first about moving out, and then we had a second conversation where I'd figured out here's how I think it would be best.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't say, oh, you need to pay me child support and then I'll pay the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I said was, the mortgage payment is coming out of your bank account anyway. You keep paying the mortgage and you can pay me the little bit of difference.
Mm-hmm.
So there was way less rejection. And it was much more common sense
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than
And I
having.
want to say, like, I listened to one of your YouTube videos that kind of pointed towards that type of conversation that you had with yourself when you were like, okay, what went wrong? Like, how can you take responsibility, I believe, for like your part of the relationship? And it's funny because I know I recently spoke with someone. I'd noticed it for myself too, right? And I recently spoke with someone who's going through something in their relationship with their spouse. And I was like, what did you feel on the day you were getting married? And she was like, oh my gosh, it was this, it was that. I was like, that is a sign that you probably need to just bail out now. Um, but it's always hard. I'm sorry, there's something flying in front of
Hmm.
me. There's you want to try sometimes, and that's not always the best option. um my philosophy now is to give things a certain amount of trials, and then know what my non-negotiables are, and then keep moving after that. But listen to your video brought a few questions to my mind, right?
Mhm.
At 47, I'm so well, 46. I'm not 47 yet. Come November, we'll cross over. Um, I'm like, why why didn't I even know, you know, when I was younger? Why wasn't I in tune with my feelings, you know, then? And I'm so scared for even my kids, because I know that when we're all teenagers or youths, like we're just all go, 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 go. We're not as in tune with ourselves as we should be. Um, and if we can just equip anyone, like a child, I know no child is listening, but like if we can help your child or my child, what will we tell them to help
Well,
them be more aware?
I know I was far better at this with my son, who's older,
Mm,
than with my daughter. But we would have conversations about what what is your body telling you?
mm,
Because, we're taught to fear strangers.
mm-hmm,
Don't let your children talk to a stranger. When the reality is, the people who abuse children are the people who know the children
yeah.
and who have the parents' trust. So I would have those conversations with him about, have you ever been, right? Like that black, heavy feeling in your stomach
Mm, mm, mm-hmm,
with
mm,
anyone, please tell me.
mm. Okay. Okay. I
Um,
get one of those. I think that's one of the ones where, like, I think my son, my younger son, did something in school. I can't remember what he did in school, or he did something silly, stupid. And I was like, "What did you feel before you took that action? Like, did you know?"
well, and we end up, our heads can lie to us, is what I've
Mm-hmm.
learned. And so it's what is happening in our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for children, it's easier because they don't have the verbal really. But I think naturally they're more in tune with what's happening in their bodies.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what message is your body giving you on this? Like,
We need to help them do
and
that.
also to recognize, because nobody, like my family, did not speak about feelings or
Mm-hmm.
listening to your body. Like, no, no. And so I grew up to be seen. Everything I did, I was really, really good at. If I couldn't be really good at it, it was off my
Mhm.
plate. And that was just my place. Now, and what I have learned over the years is, like, I know when I'm in a really good space now by how my body feels, right? And sometimes after mediation, it's just this, it's really hard to describe.
Mhm.
Um, but it's in my chest and my stomach's warm. And it's just, I feel peaceful and powerful at the same time,
Mm.
but not powerful in, I want to take control and manage anybody, but just very, very grounded.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
But
really
it
good.
has taken a long time
Mhm.
to get there. And I mean, certainly like going to law and everything, I lived in my head. I lived in my head for
Yeah.
years and years and years.
Yeah.
And if
Not.
if 30-year-old Kim would have heard that 55-year-old Kim is talking about listening to her body,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
herself
Yeah.
would say, there's no effing way.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I find that I'm doing more of that too. And by the way, oh my gosh, you look really good for 55. Um, um,
but
yeah.
but but,
I'm.
but that brings up another point. Like 2 years ago, I I'm in a restaurant and I see this guy who had been a client in the mid 2000s.
Mhm.
So I went and said hi, and he looked at me and he said, "You look familiar, but I can't place you." And I'm like, "I'm Kim Korven." And he's, "Kim, you look so much younger." And I said, "That's because I ended my first marriage." Because there was, no, because there was other people right around within a couple of years of when I'd asked my husband to leave.
Mhm.
And they're like, "Wow, I didn't recognize you, Kim."
Yeah.
Just such a
Yeah.
significant difference.
Yeah.
And I look at pictures of me then, and my eyes were dead.
Yeah.
And I didn't
Yeah.
smile. And
Yeah. It does suck the joy. It does suck the joy out of you. And I think that's a great way to come to this question that I have. So there are some situations that are so messy and toxic before you even realize it. Again, I want to own my part um, in my marriage in that I shouldn't have married when I did. And I'm sure my ex had his motive. In a way, in reflection, I had my motive too. But at the end of the day, I really did believe like we both loved each other, and I believe like he loved me as much as I loved him. And I think that was where the imbalance was. Like I was so clouded that I really did believe he loved me as much as I did, and that anything that was happening was just like super spiritual, and the forces of the universe, demons and devils were out to get my marriage. Um, and I say all that to say, like, some of us only wake up when the situation has become already messy. Um, how can you even use, and I know we haven't spoken about your process yet, but like, how can you transform an already messy situation to use your process? Have you seen it done? um and I can give more example about I felt like mine was already so messy by the time,
well,
you know.
I think first off, most people,
Hmm.
like, we're taught, we have our fairy tales about how we lived happily ever after.
Yes.
And then we have the historic, religious, and legal elements that are, marriage is for life.
Hmm.
So nobody wakes up one morning and goes, I'm going to get divorced. It is this process, and there is the only right time is the right time for the person in it. And it
Mm,
takes, like for me, it was 3 years. I've talked to some women, it's 5 years or more.
mm-hmm.
Okay. And life is messy. Life is, and why not instead of messy, it's juicy. And my situation was certainly juicy.
Mm,
Okay. It could have gone really the other way.
okay.
Okay. And I've seen it with my clients because sometimes I work with people where there are mental health issues. And my consulting practice, sometimes I work with women where there has been coercive control. Now, coercive control, you get an idea from those words what it's about, but it is the best predicator to, is there going to be violence? Is this going to result in a woman being killed?
Hmm.
Because the stats are with men who are murdered, it's usually a stranger. When with women, it's usually
Mm,
somebody they know. And
mm,
about half the
wow.
time, it's a spouse. Well, actually, when I studied sociology, I remember this stat 35 years later. It was 78% of all women in Canada then who were murdered. It was by a spouse or a former spouse or
Wow.
boyfriend, former boyfriend.
Hmm.
And in Canada, it's about every 2.5 to 3 days, a woman is murdered. In the States, it's much more frequently. You've got a bigger population. And coercive control is the best way. There's really good research out of England and Australia. And I mean, the United Nations even has said, has recommended that countries have an observatory on femicide. When you have somebody who's very controlling, and I'm saying women, but in
Mm-hmm.
reality, it's about 13% of this coercive control. Men are the victims. So it isn't
Mm,
exclusively women being the victims. And the other thing is men in relationships, like my cousin, like
mm-hmm.
are much more likely to commit suicide.
Wow.
Okay. So it's helping victims stick handle so they can get out successfully.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not a 1 month program, a 2 month program. It takes a lot of time and support and a lot of faith and empowerment built in.
Hmm.
Okay. Because, like, I figured out how to, we have this notion that to do it peacefully, both people have to be on board. Well,
Ah.
right. And I learned, I got my spouse to move out by how I talked to him
Hmm. Wow.
when he didn't want to end the marriage.
Hmm.
So it's, those take more out of me than my beautiful mediation, mental health issues. It's actually like I did a mediation session last month, and there's mental health issues, and they've been to a counselor. And the husband, he's like, when are we going to talk about the bad stuff? And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's in the past.
Wow.
We don't need to focus on the past. We're building a better family.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so that's the ideal, that's for sure. Um, I just feel like even like for mine, yeah, we were already, unbeknownst to me, too far gone. Um, and sometimes again, some people will, it's hard. It's
Well,
hard.
the gentle way
Hmm.
doesn't work for everybody.
Mm.
If a person can't take any responsibility for what's going on, it won't work. If a person is really stuck on those past hurts
Mm-hmm.
and blaming the other person, it won't work. If they're really not in tune with creating, wanting the best for the other person, no. And the gentle way actually comes from judo. So I was this competitive judo athlete in high school, and I loved it. And then I walked away from the sport because I went my last year competing, I lost every fight. I moved up to seniors, and I thought, I'm going to take a year off. And then I went on that exchange to Indonesia, and I never went back until after I had my son. But judo, and I think going back to judo, it brought me such joy that was part of me finding the courage to end my marriage. Doing something that brought me joy.
Mm-hmm.
And judo in English means the gentle way. And it has two main principles. And the first one is mutual welfare and benefit. And the second one is maximum efficiency with minimum effort. And both, like, I hadn't even thought of judo when I started doing this work. And I was a couple of years into it. And it's like the gentle way, like that is what I do. Judo, those principles of judo is the foundation of how I approach this. And you're beating yourself up about the approach you took. But we have been enculturated to believe that divorce is a legal issue. Now, the only thing that the court must determine is that your marriage is over. If you want legal recognition that your marriage is over, you need a divorce certificate from the court. Everything else, you can kind of do it yourself. It's a life event. So when you think back to when you were engaged, marriage is a legal issue. That's why you have to buy the marriage license. But people, when they get engaged, they don't run and get the marriage license first. Plan the event. And nobody's telling them, oh, you must, the priest is not saying what you wear, how much you're going to spend on the event. It's the two of you. And when you take that same approach with divorce and go, well, really, custody and access, and those terms are leaving, thank goodness, they're property terms. They're really, it's just about parenting.
Yeah.
And child support is really about how are we going to pay for our children so that they have decent lives. And property, dividing family property, that sounds all formal. It's just who gets what. And when you approach it from a perspective of putting the kids first and setting joint goals, people want to be fair. When people are actually vulnerable, when you create that space without judgment, people want to be fair. And it's really, really beautiful.
So I see where if we, without knowing anything, without going into marriage, as if you were knowing you were going to divorce, that truthfully the best thing to do if divorce comes knocking is to seek someone like you, a gentle way, or a mediator that practices similar things. And it's to, I really love how you said, let me see if I can remember a few things that I liked. One of them was that both of you don't need to agree on the gentle way process. So I like that, in that if the other person is too far gone in their ways. I've been difficult. If there's external pressure or things on them, again, maybe if there's mental health issues, you take responsibility for your part and set the stage for what you want to see. I also really loved how you said it was like a live moment, which I don't know why. The legal system is really there just to certify that, okay, legally this marriage is over. And again, I think one of your thing, even on your website and on your YouTube channel, is that um, the marriage is a life event. I think that's what you say, or is it that divorce is a life event? I might have it mixed up.
Divorce, they're both life events.
And to treat it like that, and I feel like that way you get the most success, from it. I know at the end of the day, like, mine again took too long. I always like using my story for
Mhm.
this conversations. Mine took way too long for reasons known to my ex, why he wanted to hold on to me forever. I don't know. While still doing all the things, he was doing. um, I don't understand that. But at some point, I decided enough was enough. And I realized that, I was staying because of things I believed that were going on that weren't true, and realizing that the kids were a priority. And I think that really helped me when I refocused that way, and my mental health was also a priority to me. And if both of us checked out, then there wouldn't be anyone for the kids. So in a way, that was, I don't know if in the gentle way, the goal or your why also helps you to make decisions. But I feel like for me it did, because like for the longest it's like, oh my gosh, my spouse. And after a while I was like, wait, you got 3 kids, girl, like,
I
it's no
know,
longer about
exactly. It's like I was protecting him at first,
exactly.
and then feeling like I couldn't talk to anybody, because my marriage is supposed to be perfect. I'm supposed to have the perfect marriage. And
Yeah.
man, was I messed up.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
what's like, I remember pretty much everyone I meet. I love people. And about 5 or 6 years after we separated, a lawyer in town contacted me about I had drawn up a will for this elderly woman, and I had witnessed it, and she died, so I had to do an affidavit that yeah, I was actually there. I didn't remember her off the top of my head.
Ah.
I went for a drive and I drove past her house. Like I had remembered the conversation we had, but I was never sure who it was with. And after that, I looked up her address. I went and I'm like, oh, yeah. But it made me realize what a black space I'd been in, that I
Hmm.
wasn't able to recall her immediately.
Yeah.
And we get in that. And that's why the importance of joy, because we get in that dark, dark space.
Hmm.
And I was even thinking that, if my husband would just die, that would be the perfect solution.
Hmm.
How twisted is that?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But you're in such a dark space, you don't see it.
Hmm.
And that going back for me, going back to judo and the joy it brought me,
Hmm.
made me want more,
Hmm.
made me realize more was possible.
Hmm.
And it was actually when I realized that our relationship was twisting up our kids, that's when I went, I have got to do something. And I was very logical going through, okay, well, how much time in this relationship were we really happy? and how much have I been miserable, and how much has been very much in my head.
So that's a great inventory to take. Yeah.
And it wasn't, and the thing is, you can love somebody, but you can't live with them. The behavior is incompatible.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I've worked on with my kids since the separation, because there was a time when my daughter, she's very much like me, so kind of her own person. She was, I don't want to go spend time with dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's boring there. We always have macaroni and cheese on Tuesdays. And I'm like, look, you need to keep going to see your dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was that conversation I coined, you can love somebody and not like their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
You don't always like my behavior. There's times here when we eat between 5 and 9, and it could be a bowl of cereal.
Mm-hmm.
At least with your dads, you're learning this routine, and learning two different ways of being is such a great life skill.
Yes. Yes.
So I often talk with my clients about, so you don't like each other's behavior. That doesn't. And the other interesting thing that some of the best advice I received was that he's not acting that way to piss you off. He is just being himself. And it's part of that incompatibility, right? We characterize it as he's doing it. He's just, but no, it's my
Yeah.
buttons that are being pushed.
Wow. Wow.
No.
Again, an aha moment right there. Yep.
And it was what I've learned, and I guess really what gave me the passion and the courage to leave law, because I spent so many, like, trying to do this as a lawyer when you're supposed to represent one person,
Mm-hmm.
when my heart was about let's help the family,
Yeah.
was a real struggle for me. And it's seeing my kids and seeing the impact of divorcing peacefully has had on them. So my son, when he was 7, was at a judo tournament, 7 or 8. So this is when things are still really raw. And he's fighting, and he was thrown in the first second of the match. And he screams at the top of his lungs afterwards, I want him dead. And there's Coach Kim. And it's a little wee space everybody heard. And it was just so horrific. And fast forward 6 years, and I'm the manager for the provincial, well, for my city, there was provincial winter games, and judo was a sport, and my son was competing. And I'm talking to these parents, and they're like, yeah, your son, he's turned into a really great person. Like he is so respectful and kind-hearted, does what he's told. And it turned out it was their son who my son had wanted dead.
Oh my gosh.
I had completely blocked out who the other child was because it was so traumatic for me. Understatement. But it was the most healing conversation to learn that, because it really brought home to me how, and my former spouse and I did not fight. It was kind of like my home growing up, but there was so much tension. And my son could feel it. So it was this wonderful healing, because I realized that that was the effect that staying married had had on him, and the shift in who he became, because that marriage ended. The family didn't end, but we weren't living together anymore. And it's that really that got me thinking, coupled with what happened with my cousin. I need to do this. And continuing to see the impact on my kids. And they have really, really great relationships with their father. And it's really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
How
Some
it's evolved.
some men have I applaud the men who try to have great relationships with their children. I've also seen some women who don't give that access to men. Um, at the same time, I see that the society kind of this legal system again wants just the women to be the one taking care of the kids, sole custody. Um,
Oh, because
and
here it's all shared parenting. That is the norm, like 50-50.
Ah,
Yeah.
so I was just about to say someone I know, and maybe I'll share a link in the notes I write up. Um, i- she's like a close acquaintance, and I share a lot of her things, but she's the creator, founder of like a Facebook group called Single Wealthy Mommies, and it's just like a group for single women. Emma Johnson, but she is currently like part of the force spearheading 50-50 shared parenting in the United States. So I think recently with the Equal Pay Day, she was featured like on CNBC and all these outlets. And she's just trying to create more awareness out there about shared parenting. Like, I feel like we should actually go to the court, with the option that, what, we're gonna do shared parenting.
Well,
Straight.
the thing about shared parenting, though, to be careful about, it's the conflict that harms kids.
Mhm.
So this is a long time ago now, but the firm I worked at, there was a client who it was really acrimonious. Like the police had to be called nearly every time the children were exchanged.
Hmm.
So our our client had us get a custody and access assessment done by a psychologist, which recommended that the children be with um, our client. Now, that is expert evidence, and the court is supposed to give um, weight to evidence tendered by an expert. The decision was shared parenting 50-50. And the lawyers in the firm, we were all just so very, very surprised given the high degree of conflict. And then I attended some continuing legal education, and a judge was speaking about this report that the judges had. The authors were Kelly and Lamb, and it says about children need quantity time with both parents. The children will not do, if they don't have significant contact with dad, they won't do as well in school, career choices, girls will be more promiscuous. I am a curious soul, right? And I like thinking and I like reading. So I went to the Law Society library to get a copy of this article.
Mhm.
The librarian didn't have it. The library didn't have it. And the librarian said, well, just a minute. Just wait, Kim, I'll try to find it for you. And so one of the judges agreed that she could copy his article for me. So she gave it to me and she gave me another article. And when I ran off to do my master's as part of reclaiming me after divorce, I
Mhm.
threw it all out because I was downsizing. But I've got a pretty good memory. It was the difference between those two articles was startling
Hmm.
because the one that she found for me unsolicited was peer reviewed research and had here are assumptions, and it dealt with conflict as well as these other matters. The other one was not peer review research quality, right? There was no assumptions at the start, none of, about the limitations.
Mhm.
And I noticed often they were citing themselves as the authorities, which usually in peer reviewed research, you see people are citing other authorities. So
Mm.
it was an eye opener for me. And since then, I don't know how I stumbled across Nadine Burke Harris's TEDx talk
Okay.
on adverse childhood experiences. Is
Mm-hmm.
a real eye opener. And if anybody loves their children, it's a wonderful resource to go, here's why we shouldn't fight in divorce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's just, it has become, yeah, this passion. Well, it's kids. I want to help families be happy.
Yeah.
And there are some couples who come to me for mediation and we go through the process and they decide to stay together. And I go, well,
Mm.
here's the name of a really good marriage counselor you can work with.
Ooh, those are juicy. I love that.
Yeah. And it's just, it's like great, happy families.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what I care about because in happy families, then children can grow up to really thrive. And I think
Oh yeah.
if you have children who are secure in being in love,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be kinder and gentler human
Mm.
beings.
Yeah, and they will, um, well, hopefully we also teach them a little bit of world savvy, and then they go out into the world as the perfect, human being, able to assert themselves
Mhm.
uh, in the world and also show empathy to
Well,
others.
and to have parents who are demonstrating grace and respect in challenging times is
Mm-hmm.
such a gift.
Yes, yes. Oh, yeah, especially like, challenging times pre-COVID would have been, oh, we're in the middle of a divorce or whatever life events is happening. But now, COVID, it's like so many divorces are happening, at least for celebrities. We're also kind of hearing that regular people will be having the divorce rates is getting higher. And now I just remembered on one of your videos, I love how you shared that people could still cohabitate together while going through the divorce process. Like arrangements in the home, sleeping arrangements and other kind of stuff. So again, if anyone is interested in learning more, just hop on YouTube and search Kim Colvin, and you'll find her videos on there. So I have like a few other questions. I don't want us to not talk about what brought the two of us together. That blog post you shared, um, and so like if you can just explain to someone who is considering a divorce right now, or is in the middle of a separation and considering divorce, um, how to tell your spouse you want a divorce. And I love it. I love it. And I've seen it, I've read it, but I only want you to share so that other people will know. I feel like the most important takeaway of this conversation is this, that for me personally, I didn't do all these things, um, but I did some of them. You understand? And in hindsight, now that I'm on the other side, I see where it would be nice if there was if this existed, and I knew this thing. So if you could briefly just talk about, the number one, take responsibility, creating a goal, educating ourselves, and then focusing on the kids and planning, or just maybe choose a few that you want to talk about.
Well, when you approach, so divorce, I guess the skinny behind it all, Gloria, is divorce. There's a death,
Mm, yes.
and the death is of the relationship, and the dream you had that the relationship would survive. When when you think of it as a divorce, you kind of start going like people who give eulogies don't say this person was a sack of shit.
Truth.
It's always the really beautiful parts.
Yeah.
So it's called let's approach it from that same perspective. Now I've talked about and I actually have a different website, Gloria, and it has the in the title, thegentlewaydivorce.com. And
Okay.
people,
I think that's the same.
no, there's gentlewaydivorce.com. I'm morphing to the gentle way to, but why I'm saying thegentlewaydivorce.com, if people just type that in, it gets to a page where you can sign up for the How to Tell Your Spouse workbook.
Okay.
So if they want to learn more, and it's free,
Okay.
and it takes them directly to that sign-in page.
Okay. Good.
Okay. So it's, instead of Gentle Way Divorce, it's
The
thegentlewaydivorce.com.
gentle way. Okay.
Divorce.com.
Let me type
Now,
that.
we've talked about taking responsibility. When you take responsibility, it's really hard to blame the other person. So it changes your mindset. So you need to think back, right? Like I thought back to that when we got engaged. Oh, man. And then it was like, okay, I can't just blame him, because my instincts were saying, say no. And I said yes. And because I said yes, I have these two great kids. So it isn't a loss. It's just what is. In terms of planning, that was part of the going, okay, well, how much time was I really happy? Like really, really investigating, looking in my heart. And I also thought back to my best memories of us together, like that eulogy, like preparing for a eulogy, essentially. So that instead of saying you're a piece of shit, right? And so my norm for dealing with conflict is passive aggressive.
Same here. Same here.
So it could have been really easy for this to have gone. Like if I hadn't planned, it would have been really, really ugly. Just based on who I naturally am. I'm a conflict avoider. So I planned, really planned. And it was sharing examples of our best memories. And when I did looked at how much time I'd been happy, it was a long time since I had been really happy in the marriage. And those really good memories were really early in the marriage. And when I saw that, it was easy then to say, it has been like 6 years since we've laughed together.
Wow.
Like we have stopped bringing out the best in each other, and our children deserve more. They deserve better. And I planned it. I had the initial conversation with him before he went away on a work trip to a convention. It was good for me.
Oh, you got to use wisdom.
I'm saying, if you think I was this person who handled it perfectly, oh no. Like when I say, if I can do it, anybody can do it, it's way heartfelt. And I had the education because having practiced family law, but you need to know ahead of time. And if you reach out to me, I have a workbook that I prepared. It's like 18 pages long or something, but it's basically got all the information you need to gather, not legal, but this is to treat it like a life event.
Gotcha.
And that's, like I'd give that to listeners free as well if they reached out.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
We'll share your email or something for them to read.
Because it's that taking responsibility and I miss setting a goal. If you set that goal, and not just on paper, and it isn't about, well, my legal goal is I'm going to get half the property. Kids are going to live with me. I'm going to pay X number of dollars a month. With your goal, forget about the friggin' legal issues.
Mm-hmm.
if you want to keep it peaceful. Because what the legal system does is the legal system is I take no responsibility for my actions and I blame
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And it's all about my legal rights. And it's like that story of the fence. The legal rights really don't matter to the person. There's something underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And focus on what is underneath. So set your goal. That was my goal, that they would have the best relationship possible with their dad. And as part of that, my separation agreement doesn't mention custody. And my
Wow.
lawyer had a fit when she read it and said,
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you sign this. And
Mm.
I'm like, no, 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 no. And I ended up, I had to sign off saying I would never sue her or the firm when things went sideways.
Mm.
And that was 12 years ago. And how many times do you think things have gone sideways?
I think you've been successful. So.
And if I had listened to her professional advice, we would have fought for 5 years and spent, I would think, like I would hate to think how much we would have spent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that was a deal breaker. And I realized then that like I'm part of the system and I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
How is it for people who aren't part of the system when they're feeling like failures? The tendency will be instead of listening to their bodies, they're going to listen to the lawyer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely.
But it's educating yourself, and you don't have to commit. Like the relationship with a lawyer used to have to be like marriage
Mm-hmm.
or the attorney. They'd represent you the whole way through.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually hire an attorney just for piecemeal work.
Yeah.
Tell me about the law about this. That's
Mm-hmm.
all I want you to do. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's also lots of free resources online now that make it much more accessible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think I was one of those lucky people in that um, I found a really good lawyer who just held my hand all through. And, of course, again, like I'll pay for consultation, but, she went far and beyond. Um, she didn't go to the actual court with me, but everything else, like you just mentioned, I had her for peace, those piecemeal services.
and the other thing I have, um, I'm just they might have to email me for this, but
Mhm.
I created a mini course on how to find the right lawyer. It's called Avoiding
Mm.
the Divorce from Hell, and it's about choosing the right lawyer.
Oh, wow.
So
That'll
that
be.
is a free resource. Like I am committed to helping, as not everybody
Mhm.
can afford
Yeah.
to work with a professional. Not everybody needs a professional. Some people need attorneys, but so that you have the right attorney, like you found the right attorney,
Mhm.
but so
Mhm.
people know what questions to ask
Mhm.
to find the right attorney. And in that mini course, I actually prepared interview notes.
Oh, wow.
You print it out like it's the script.
Yeah.
What you say to the attorney, here are the questions, evaluating
Mm.
the conversation at the end,
Mhm. Mhm.
because it's a life event. And let's
Mm.
start treating it like that. So look at all these free resources I'm talking
Mhm.
about. My
Mhm.
goodness.
Yes, you have it. I also wonder if, in hindsight, like I know I did maybe I had like one or two counseling session with like my pastors in church. As of that time, I didn't have a therapist. I didn't believe in therapists. But in hindsight, I really also believe that that is a time where you need to
Mhm.
have accountability partners. Either you find a coach, maybe a divorce coach, a divorce doula. So someone that would just do the things the lawyers can't do, you know, because for me, I feel like there are some places that I still fell prey to the words that came out of the mouth of my ex. Um, and I'm sure you know what that means. Where like, oh, I got taken because I agreed to something, but then we showed up in court and they didn't fulfill their part, but I fulfilled my part. And that happens a lot in all of these cases. I feel like I shouldn't have. I think there are like two things like that that I know better now. Um,
Well, even when I was a lawyer practicing traditional law, I remember sitting with one client and she was talking about her relationship. And it was really interesting and I liked it. But I eventually said to her, "Do you have an employee assistance program through work?" And
oh,
she said,
wow.
"Yes, I do." And I said, "Well, it would be much cheaper for you, much more cost effective to talk to a counselor about this instead of chatting with me. I
Mm,
see a counselor like everybody, we're humans.
mm-hmm,
We
mm-hmm,
screw up, we're made that way.
mm-hmm.
And everybody needs a counselor every now and again. And if you have access to counseling, take it. This is
Yes,
a time when
yes,
you need it.
yes, yes, yes. Totally. I totally, totally agree.
Or,
So,
the divorce, there weren't divorce coaches or divorce doulas when I was
but
going
they
to,
were,
there weren't,
they were.
at least not where I lived.
Do they exist now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh, I should be. Maybe I should go take some classes and become one. But yeah, I just feel like, yeah, like things on like child support, housing, um, if you do agree on that, health insurance, there are some things you just want to be clear-headed and troubleshoot or brainstorm with somebody else so that you're not doing it based on your emotion. Um,
Well,
and
but I think there's a fallacy there
mm,
because our emotions are part of us. So the emotions have to be incorporated in the decision making.
explain more.
Well, it's when we go, "Oh, I'm not going to deal with that." It gets bigger
Yeah, oh
and
yeah,
it comes
definitely.
back and bites us.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. And to actually say, "I feel this way," I don't always know what I do, but I remember being really surprised by this one couple, and he says at the end of one session, "You're better than the counselors," and I'm like, "What?" Yeah, he said, "You're way more money, but you're way better too. You got us talking," and I'm like, "What?"
Oh wow.
He said, "Well, the counselor, we would each just take turns talking to the counselor. You got us talking to each other."
Wow. That's beautiful.
Oh, I don't
That's
know what I
beautiful.
do.
No, it's a gift. Like I'm here talking to you and I can see it, I can feel it. I feel like it's and that's why it's a calling for you because
Mhm.
it's more than the money. It's the work for the family.
And it is for the family.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, I deal with like our society is really nasty to men too. Like it's nasty to
Mhm.
women.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's men are taught not to share their emotions.
Mhm.
And, I interact with some beautiful women and I interact with some beautiful men too, both
Mhm.
who are hurting.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. A lot of people are hurting and again, I feel like if we all at the beginning can feel ourselves before we make all of this life commitments, then we stand, we all definitely stand a better chance of being that person that our spouse wants in the relationship. Um, what else? So on your five list, I think did we do all of them? Did we do planning?
Well, I talked about, that I had to plan or I would have been
Okay.
passive aggressive. Yeah. Yeah. I think the most, well, I think they're all important. Um, what I didn't say in it is this is somebody you loved once. This is the other parent of your children. And I mean, I did not even want to look at my spouse at the end. Like if he would even touch my shoulder, my skin would crawl. I was still able to do this. So know that you have it within you. Well, it's just this is somebody who you loved once.
Yeah,
And
that's the
this is
thing.
the parent for your children. And if you can look at it from what am I teaching my children by staying married?
Mm-hmm.
What will they learn if we divorce peacefully? What
Mm,
impact will that have on their growth and development?
yeah, yeah. And to try for shared now that I know better, I'm such a provider. Like you have to try for shared parenting because at the end of the day, I think some men just don't want to do it, not because they can't do it. So I feel like that's one that we need to let the
Well, I
court
mean, we don't.
decide.
My situation has never been 50-50 parenting, but it
Okay.
works for our family.
Okay.
And
But it's at least something, you
oh,
know.
yeah, no,
Yeah. Yeah. For me, yeah, it's just been since 2009, January 5th, and we're not counting when, because we separated and then we finally divorced in 2015.
mhm.
Um, for one person to just be doing this, like,
So
I'm tired.
he has nothing to do with your kids.
No, he provides financial support and he shows up when he wants to show up. Um, and I tried, most of the things you're talking about, I initiated. Like I did calls every Thursday. Like I chose a day of the week. I'd be like, okay, kids, you check in with your dad. And I did that for the longest time. And it was always me doing it. It was me doing it. And so after a while, I was like, I'm not trying to force them on you. And especially as the kids noticed that it was just us doing it, they lost interest, right? So there was that, and there was so many other things. There was a time the court arranged that there should be drop-offs, and he would come up with, oh, like he's working, oh, his job just called, or like times when like I would be counting on him to pick them up for the weekend, and he wouldn't show up. He wouldn't communicate. He wouldn't do anything. 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours later, um, even as we speak, one of my kids had a birthday party. No, not a birthday party. Had his birthday this past week, and was like, "Oh, I'll come and see him." He sent whatever his gift was to him, and I'm like, "Oh, he never showed up. Like, why did I think he he had changed? Like, it makes no sense."
Well,
But again, that is who he is, and his
yeah.
pattern has never changed from when we were married to now being divorced. That pattern
Listen,
never changed.
and your boys are always going to love him,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
his behavior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what do you say to your boys when he doesn't show up?
Let me think. Because there are times, I'm just like my petty old self. I'll be like,
I
yep,
know we get frustrated. Yeah.
I told you it wasn't going to show up. But, other times I just tell them, look, it was good that we believed that he would show up this time, but he didn't. He That's who he is. I tried to just reaffirm that. And then I'll be like, hey guys, but I'm here. Like, I got you.
Well, it's and and it might be that he doesn't know how to show love,
Oh yeah, I totally believe that, but like
right? And
I
it's
can't I
and
can't help.
it's You know, that's something you could tell your boys. He does not know how to show love.
Mm,
And that is not that does not make you unlovable. You're very lovable.
mhm,
The issue is with him.
mhm, mhm.
And these events happening are actually giving you really great insight into what happens if you ever become a parent,
Mm,
because
mhm.
you have been exposed to this and it hurts, right? Like it really, really hurts. And if they say it doesn't fucking hurt at all, mom, you will say, don't give me that. That's a wall that you've
Yeah.
built to protect the hurt.
Mhm, mhm,
But I want you to learn from this. Like, you are lovable. How do you want to be as a parent? How what kind of interactions do you want with your children?
mhm.
And how can I help you learn that? Because your dad is checked out, but what can I do to support you learn that?
Mm, mm. Yeah, such those are such profound words, not just for me, but hopefully for anyone listening, and especially if their kids are still young. My kids are now teenagers, preteen. So hopefully intuitively I have done some of these things.
I think sometimes though it helps with those with that hurt to actually name it,
Mm, mm,
so that they know that they're seen,
wow.
and to turn it into something that they can learn from.
Make it a teachable moment.
Yeah.
You mean, yeah. But when you talk about naming the feeling, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, like they're going to say, I'm not hurt, mom. Dad's just a jerk.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And it's like, no, no, no. Kids always love their parents. So don't give me that. You've built a wall to protect the hurt. And that's perfectly understandable. You can have the wall and have the love.
Hmm. So what would you name a feeling in that situation where that child goes, "Oh no, 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 no,
No, that's just how I talked. That's how I'd
no."
name
Okay.
it.
Okay. 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 Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
this is
That's
really
good.
like, this is not fair to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But life isn't always fair and we always face challenges. So,
Yeah.
because you experience this, how do you want to be as a parent?
Mm,
Because if we don't talk about it, you're just going to repeat what you knew.
exactly. Yeah.
Because how was your your former husband? How was he raised?
So definitely in hindsight, a little bit not shown from what he said. It feels like he, you know, people parents weren't there for him. But again, that's how the Nigerian culture is. And I was lucky that I grew up in a home where um so my dad married my mom, but by the time I was like teenagers, they there were issues, right? For me anyway. And he had in Nigeria, you can do that. You can marry like a new
Right.
wife and stuff. So he had one of those. But I was already much, much developed in age when that happened. For my ex, though, he was that other family, you know.
So it's to talk to your boys about the culture too,
Hmm.
but to ask them, how do you want to be as a parent?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And use this as the learning.
yeah. That's true. Yeah. And I see my boys and I
Just
see they want to do so much better. Um, but there is something to having a male role model, you know.
Well, I mean, part of what, and that was one of the things that really was hard for me in making that decision
Mm,
to leave. And then I thought I knew two women who were single parents. Kids had very little to do. In one family had nothing to do with dad, and the other family very little to do with dad. And those kids were fabulous kids,
Mm,
right? I had to find, and I often forget to mention that, so thank you. But it
mm,
was, I had to find the role models.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there was really good support from grandparents in
Mm-hmm,
both of those situations. But yeah, no, it wasn't, it completely contradicted what I thought needed to be.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it was one of the things that helped me go to breathe and go, okay, yeah, this is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It
And
truly is.
and maybe I need to write about that. I haven't written about it.
Oh yeah, you need to. You
Gloss
mean
over
like
it.
the impact of a male role model?
Well, this notion that it's one of the things that can keep us stuck in a
Hmm.
relationship that's not working.
Hmm.
That
Ah,
right?
yeah.
That in reality, no, an extended family male
Yeah.
who's a really decent human being is a better
Yes.
role model
Yes.
and
Yes.
be better, that can compensate when there's no
Yes.
dad in the picture.
Yes, yes, totally. And I totally agree. I remember, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like even my kids were in like Boy Scout when they were younger. I really love that. I
Mhm.
like that, the programs that the churches have
Mhm.
where at least kids can get under like the tutelage of, a male figure and the environment that the church has just that. I miss my dad, of course. He just passed in October last year. But like I would always be like, just go talk to grandpa. Like in the
Mhm.
last past 3 years, I'd be like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this. Grandpa, hey, your
Yeah,
grandchild.
yeah.
Um, and I wish I'd done that like when they were so much younger. But again, yeah, my
You
dad had
learn.
all the
You learn.
exactly. He tried so much. My dad being someone who married a second wife too, and then the family just being a little bit in the middle, not together because of that. I saw what he did like in the past 5, 6 years, to just change all of that, to be the person he should have been, like when we were going through.
Well, I mean, culturally, that model works in the Nigerian culture.
Mhm, mhm,
But
mhm,
to bring it to this white Anglo-Saxon based
mhm.
culture
Yeah,
with
yeah.
different social mores,
Mhm.
right? Like it it's hard.
It
It's
is.
really challenging.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It really is. And I think people, especially Nigerians, are figuring that out. The ones who maybe you were raised like that back home, and then you want to come here and have one wife in the house and have like a girlfriend outside, and you're like, financially, it's not feasible. Mentally, it's not possible. Um,
Well,
and
and culture is such a strong force. It's like this blindfold we're wearing that we
Mhm.
don't see.
Yeah.
But it's this filter that we see the world through.
Mm.
So we expect it's going to work.
Yeah.
But and for me, that was the Cinderella. They lived happily ever after.
Me too. I love
Right?
my Disney.
That was the cultural.
Mhm. Yeah, I loved my Disney ideology of life, like find my Prince Charming, live happily ever
Mm.
after. And yet again, I come to the table with knowing that, you know what, I had something to contribute to it, going downhill. And ag- Before I lose my train of thought, so I think I have one final question, but I don't know if it will even make sense at this point. But before I say say that, um, so on listening to you and reading your write-ups, there's a theme I noticed, and it is that, in spite of the fact that you say that you're like me, passive aggressive, blah, blah, and all of that. Like sometimes avoiding conflicts, but I see the same thing. Like it's a push and a pull for you, which it is for me. Like even though you're aware that you're that person, but you make all the effort to go towards the conversation. And I noticed that in all the write-ups and the YouTube videos. And I'm saying this to say that, even some of the things you shared on YouTube are so useful to just being aware of your relationship with anyone, be it like a sister or a friend, and even your marriage generally. Like you could translate it over. It's almost like running towards conversations. Um, Instead of running away from them, and then to also know again, what did I bring to this relationship to cause it to go either this way or that way, and then to own that. I feel like for me personally, um I run away from conversations, especially when I'm tired,
Mhm.
And I want to think that I heard that in one of your videos. Like, it's just like, oh my gosh, if you started, it's gonna grow a head and an arm. And like, you know what? I'd just rather not do it. Rather not go into that conversation. But I just wanted to share that. I thought it was, your videos were really just generally can be applied towards relationships too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And as I say that, so we may have talked about this, but I don't think so. But I have this question written down, and it is, what are my rights as I look towards divorcing a spouse? I know we talked about just what legal does, but if we were actually looking at things just on a legal perspective, if I decided today I wanted to divorce from a legal perspective, what am I looking at?
So the laws change depending on where you live.
Mhm.
So it's really important to find information based on where you live. So I'm just going to say, like, divorce itself, that is the legal recognition the marriage is over. That is all divorce is. Um, but the other elements that often are dealt with, it's like who makes decisions about the children, and the traditional language is custody and access,
Mm,
which are property terms. I have control.
okay.
Um, that's morphing. Like in Canada, our Divorce Act now talks about parenting. Custody and access are gone. That is
Ah,
brand new. Um, there's where the children live, so parenting. There is financial support for the children, which is called child support. There's financial support for the spouse, potentially, which is either called spousal support or alimony.
hmm. Which I should have gotten, but I got tricked out of it. I wasn't thinking, but I understand now that it was my right, and I needed it. Go ahead.
Well, no. And that's why, like, educating yourself and potentially finding a lawyer or an attorney who will be prepared to educate you, sit down with you for an hour and go, okay, here's what, so you know. And then there's how you're going to divide your property. Those are the main issues.
Mm, mm, thank you.
And sometimes it's who gets to live in the family home. But essentially, those are the main issues. And they, like, even in Canada, the law about property division, it's different in every province. Whereas
Mm,
divorce is the same across the country.
okay.
So, this is why it's really important um, to talk to somebody local to get that information.
Okay.
Okay.
That was really, really good. And I'm going to drop my own little bit of wisdom. Once you decide to divorce, your ex is not your best friend anymore. Just wanted to say that. So don't be going and making deals with them um, before you show up in court. Don't even pick up their calls before you go to court.
I might have to do a blog post on that thing.
Yes, please do. It's like I got tricked. I got sucked in. I still had love in my heart.
Yeah, but women, we are socialized to be the peacemakers. And
Yeah.
often the pattern in the relationship is the woman doesn't say what's in her heart to keep the peace.
Mm. Hmm.
But I really like how you phrase it. He's not your best friend anymore.
He isn't. He isn't. Don't be making deals with them. Mm-mm. All right. So I love this, and I hope we covered everything. I think I covered most of the questions on my list and more, because look how long we did this
I
for.
know. And I was saying things I've never said in a podcast before. So
Yay. Thank you. Thank you. So as we wrap up, share, let's see. I always forget this. Let's see. Okay. So for everyone listening, if you loved everything that you listened to, you can hop on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Audible, Amazon Podcasts, and listen to this again. Or listen to this. Yeah. Not
or
sure what
share
else.
it.
Yeah, or share it. There's what we were looking for. Or share it. Or you can go ahead and hop on YouTube and search um Loving the Work You Do by She Loves Good Things, and you can watch us on video as we talk. And on that note, I am going to pass this over to Kim and ask Kim to share where you can find her on the interwebs and
Oh,
anything you have upcoming too.
okay. So you could Google my name, Kim Korven. I do have a YouTube channel. There's videos located in a couple different places. It used to be called Full Circle Divorce. If you see that, no, it is me. There's lots tip a day to a peaceful divorce on those ones. And then under my name, there's some longer ones. Um, Facebook, the Gentle Way Mediation Services page. But really, I think go to https colon double space. No,
That thing.
blah,
W.
right? Thegentlewaydivorce.com. And you will get the script, the divorce script, how to tell your husband you want a divorce.
Mm.
And it's fill in the blanks. And you'll also then be signing up for my newsletter. So then you'll find out, because I do free webinars.
Okay.
I usually share when I have a new blog post, because I'm in the midst of morphing
The website, right?
the website. Yeah. So the blog posts, though, are all on gentlewaydivorce.com. But to sign up for this freebie and get on my mailing list is thegentlewaydivorce.com. The other thing to know is I offer a complimentary 20-minute call.
Nice.
So if you were to email me at kim@gentlewaydivorce.com, we would set it up.
Yay. You need that,
If you have
people. Listen.
questions, yeah, kim@gentlewaydivorce.com, and just, I want to talk to you.
Yeah. And does it matter if they're calling from Canada or from the United States?
No, the
No,
principles of divorce are the
it's
same,
the same. Yes.
right? It's when you treat it as a life event, and
Mhm.
it's about empowering people to make really good decisions to put their kids first. Doesn't matter.
Yay. Yay. All right. Social media, apart from Facebook, anything else?
Oh, I'm on Instagram as Kim Korven. I
Okay.
really need to actually tighten all this up and have the same name, I think.
We
Just as
all
we're going through
we
this.
all do. And look, it's already the end of March, and like I had like a long list of to-dos, but we'll get there, Kim.
Yeah, we will.
We will.
You will. I will.
So it's been nice talking to you and doing this. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for this insightful, conversation. Again, look forward to more conversations that we can have in the future. And on that note, everyone, will see you soon.